Let's look at our vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, and wholes. So to find your vertical asymptote, you're going to factor the denominator, because that is where your whole will be found, in the denominator. And then set any factors in the denominator equal to 0 and solve for x. So a vertical asymptote is going to be like, let's say you have something like this. And then there's a dotted line. That's your vertical asymptote. So it is a line. So let's say this is -3. So x equals -3 is our vertical asymptote. So you want to make sure you keep it as x equals that number. If there's more than one, then you'll write x equals -3, x equals whatever else it is. So let's do our first one. So let's look at our denominator. We'll leave the top. So this would be x plus 1, x minus 1. Because that's the difference of squares. So our vertical asymptotes are at -1 and at x equals 1. Okay, let's look at our next one. X minus 2. This is also difference of squares, so this is x minus 3, x plus 3, vice versa. But your vertical asymptotes are at x equals 3 and x equals -3. Okay, so make sure you don't write x equals 3 comma -3, because each of these are lines, and lines must be written as x equals a number and not just as x equals 3 comma -3. All right, horizontal asymptote. So this is like, I'm going to look back at my example that I wrote here. This would be like this. This would be a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So you can have both horizontal and vertical asymptotes. You can have more than one. So what you look at is the degree of the numerator. So whenever we talk about the degree of numerator or denominator, we are talking about the highest power of x. That is what degree means. And when you look at the highest power of x, if the bottom degree is bigger, then it's going to be y equals 0. So this is big on bottom, y equals 0. Okay, so if the exponent is bigger on the bottom, if the degree is bigger on the bottom, then your horizontal asymptote is going to be y equals 0. If it is big on top, the bigger exponent's on top, then it's going to be no horizontal asymptote. If they are the exact same, so each DC means exponents are the same, divide coefficients. Okay, so let's look at the horizontal asymptote here. So the degree here is 2 and 2. So this is each DC. Exponents are the same, divide coefficients. So it's going to be 2 over 1, which is just 2. So we write horizontal asymptotes as y equals that number. So y equals 2 is our horizontal asymptote. Okay, the next one, we have a degree of 1 and a degree of 2. So it's big on bottom. So big on bottom, y 0. Y equals 0 is our horizontal asymptote. Okay, so we've covered vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes. So now we're going to do wholes, and we're actually going to do horizontal and vertical asymptotes in this section as well. So for our wholes, you are going to factor the numerator and denominator completely, and then common factors are able to be crossed out, and those are where the wholes are. And we are going to find out what those wholes are. So let's see. We have what multiplies to get -2 and adds to get 1. That would be +2, so x plus 2 and x minus 1. And then what multiplies for the denominator? What multiplies to get negative 6 and adds to get negative 1. So it'd be x plus 2 and x minus 3. So these are the same. So that's where our whole is. We say x plus 2 equals 0. So our whole is where x is negative 2. But we need to have an actual coordinate pair for the whole. So this is where we're going to plug in. So I guess I should have a step 3. Plug in x to find y. Because your whole is going to be an actual coordinate pair. So I'm going to use what is left. I'm going to use this x minus 1 over x minus 3, and I'm going to plug in that negative 2. So negative 2 minus 1 over negative 2 minus 3 to get negative 3 over negative 5, which is positive 3 over 5. So my coordinate pair for my whole is at negative 2 comma 3 over 5. That is the whole. Okay, let's go ahead and do our vertical asymptote as well. So remember, with vertical asymptote, we look at the denominator. So I'm not going to worry about where the whole is, x plus 2. I am only going to worry about the x minus 3. So x equals 3 is my vertical asymptote. Okay, and then my horizontal asymptote. They are the same. I look back at the original. So it's 1 over 1. So it's just y equals 1 is our horizontal asymptote. Okay, let's go to the next one. So let's factor top and bottom. So multiply to get negative 3, add to get 2. That'd be positive 3 and negative 1. And then what multiplies to get negative 12 and adds to get negative 1. It's a negative 4 and a positive 3. So we're able to cancel that. So our whole is going to be where x plus 3 equals 0. So where x is negative 1. So we're going to use what's left, the x minus 1 over x minus 4, and plug in negative 1. So negative 1 minus 1, negative 1 minus 4. Oh, why did I put negative 1? That should have been negative 3. Negative 3. There we go. Okay, so then that's negative 4 over negative 7, which is 4 over 7. So our whole is at negative 3 and then comma 4 over 7. Then our vertical asymptote is, we look at our denominator, so it's at x equals 4. Horizontal asymptote. They are the same exponents, so each DC, so it's 1 over 1, so y equals 1. Okay, the last two problems are doing what we just did, finding vertical asymptote, horizontal, and any wholes. So let's see, 3x over, we're going to go ahead and factor this. What multiplies to get negative 2 and adds to get negative 1. So that'd be x minus 2 and x plus 1. So we'll start with vertical asymptote. I guess we should really start with wholes because we're able to cancel some stuff out. Are there any holes? Were we able to cancel anything out? No, so none. Okay, so now we can say, okay, x equals 2 and x equals -1. Horizontal asymptote. Let's look at our exponents. This would be a 1, this would be a 2, so it's big on bottom. Big on bottom, y equals 0. So y equals 0. Okay, so we found horizontal, we found vertical, and there are no holes. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is already factored for us. There's nothing that we can cancel, so holes, none. Vertical asymptote, well, x squared equals 0, so x equals 0. And I'm just going to put comma, x equals +3. Horizontal asymptote, this would be like x to the 0 power. So it's big on bottom again. Big on bottom, y equals 0. So y equals 0. So we have all of our asymptotes and we have no holes. Okay, that is it for our notes.